Hi there. So I'm Jeffrey Gettleman. I work for the New York Times. I am the South Asia Bureau Chief, and I'm based right now in Lahore, Pakistan. And something really exciting has happened here because we've just witnessed a very historic election. A very historic election that has resulted in a pretty unusual outcome. And that is Imran Khan, who's known around the world as a famous cricket player. He's also known around the world as somewhat of a sex symbol, a very attractive guy, and years ago, who hung around these clubs in London, dated a lot of very famous women, was known as something of a playboy, has just been chosen the leader of Pakistan, which is a conservative Muslim country, armed with nuclear weapons, population of 200 million people, and it's quite poor. And so this country is now grappling with this idea that this very charismatic, famous celebrity, international celebrity, is going to be the leader. And Pakistan's got a lot of problems. And let me just list a couple, and then I'll take some questions. But the main issues it's dealing with are poverty. It has some of the worst infant mortality rates in the world. There's terrorism. There was just a suicide bombing yesterday in a different part of the country. I'm okay. It's pretty far from here, but 30 people were killed. And there's been countless bombings and attacks and ambushes in Pakistan. And so I just received a question from Ron. Is everything okay in Pakistan? And yeah, it is, but it's a country that's really troubled. There was that bad bombing yesterday. There was no more violence today. But we've seen a relentless string of suicide attacks here, and thousands of innocent people have been killed, many children. It's very sad. Carla had just asked me, what can we expect? What do you think from this? So that's like what we're all trying to figure out. I think there's going to be a bit of a murky period for the next few weeks where everybody gets their head around this idea that Imran Khan, this big celebrity, is going to be leading this country. And my guess is he's gonna be more forceful. He's got his own brand of celebrity. He's a very confident man. He's been very successful in the world of sports. He's very wealthy. And I think he's going to be a pretty forceful leader that really pushes Pakistan's interests harder. And he'll have an automatic audience because he's so well known. So a couple other things that have come up, and there's been some really good questions. Somebody was asking, what are the consequences, Tony, for regional security and stability? I think it's going to get complicated because Pakistan is this country, and this connects to a question that Monty was asking, which is how much is the military involved? Pakistan is this big, unwieldy country that has nuclear weapons and a lot of terrorism that has been controlled by the military for many decades. They often operate in the shadows. They have been accused of manipulating in this election and helping Imran Khan win. And I think we're going to see this tension between a stronger civilian administration, led by this guy who's a big celebrity, with this traditional military establishment. So how long is this going to last? Somebody just asked a question, HS. What's the term of the Pakistani prime minister? It's 5 years. They have 5 years. But there's been so much turmoil in Pakistan that almost none of the prime ministers elected have ever served their full term, including the last one, who was arrested and put in jail for fraud. And there was a lot of evidence that he had stolen money from Pakistan, public money, and invested it in properties in London. Somebody just asked Mr. Kapoor, what does this mean for India? Now, just to give a little background, a lot of these names I can tell are people from the subcontinent, but for those who might not know all the ins and outs, India and Pakistan were ruled together for a long time by the British Empire. And after World War II, the British Empire started decolonizing across the world. There used to be a saying that the sun never set on the British Empire. One of its biggest colonies was the Indian subcontinent. And in 1947, the Indian subcontinent split into two pieces, Pakistan and India. It was really violent. 1 million people were killed and all the movement between. And a big reason why it split was religion. India's mostly Hindu, Pakistan's mostly Muslim. So ever since then, there's been this tension between these two big countries. Pakistan is the sixth largest country. India is the second largest country. And Khan will bring a new dynamic to that because he's confident, he has this star power, he's experienced, he has connections around the world. He said today that he wants to make peace with India, that's crucial to help Pakistan develop because Pakistan has so many internal problems. It really needs some peace on its border so it doesn't have to worry about that. So we'll see. Ali Zain had asked, how do you see the election result where none of the hardliners could win? It's hard to tell. I think a lot of this election was about the popularity of one man, Imran Khan. He's a household name. He had been running for office for 20 years. He retired from cricket in the 1990s and got involved in politics, and this has been his dream. So slowly, steadily, he's built this big network. And he seized on a really important issue in Pakistan, which is corruption. This country is one of the poorest in Asia. I didn't appreciate it until I started doing some research. But Pakistan has some of the highest infant mortality rates, some of the lowest per capita income, some of the worst pollution, some of the lowest levels of literacy, especially for girls. And at the same time, you have these dynasties of families who have ruled this country. The Bhuttos, the Sharifs who were just ousted, who have been accused of stealing lots of money from the public. And that was an issue that Imran Khan tapped into. Somebody asked, Bilal asked, did the military have a hand in this election? From everything we're hearing, yes, they did have a hand. They took the side of Imran Khan. They felt like he was somebody they could work with, that their worldview was similar, and they could run this country kind of hand in hand. Over the last few months, the military, intelligence services have been accused of making it difficult for anybody to challenge Khan. And that's what we saw this week. He won handedly. His party did way better than any other party. Jeff asked, how would the Taliban react to such a worldly leader? That's a really good question because Imran Khan has been playing this compromise game. I want to say game. Maybe it's not a game. Maybe it's a strategy where he has been trying to talk tough about terrorism and condemn anybody that takes innocent lives. But at the same time, he's been very open-minded about the Taliban. And the Taliban are one of the most ruthless organizations in the world. The number of innocent lives they've killed with suicide bombs and gun attacks. They tried to assassinate this young girl, Malala, who was speaking out about girls' education. And they shot her in the head and thought they'd killed her, and they didn't. And she's become a real hero of Pakistan and around the world. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens with how the Taliban absorbs this celebrity playboy as the new leader of Pakistan. But that said, he had also undergone a pretty important transformation where he embraced Islam and is pretty serious about religion. Greg asked, do you believe if this suggests a loosening of the country, Western influence? In some ways, yes. I mean, Imran Khan is a very westernized Pakistani. He lived in England for many years. He was married to a British woman. His kids are half British. I think he will bring in some ideas from the West, and he's open to that. He's a real hybrid because he's very traditional in many ways. He wears the shalwar kameez. He takes Islam very seriously. He feels very connected to Pakistan. And he could have lived anywhere in the world. So many Pakistanis dream of getting out of this country where there's more opportunity. And this man did and was living the high life in London and chose to come back. So I think he'll bring some new ideas, and it'll be interesting how he blends those with a very conservative local culture. Judy asks, is he conservative or liberal? Whew. Judy, how about an easy question? I don't know. It's very hard to define that here because in many ways he's socially conservative. He has taken the side of Islamists who have advocated punishments such as amputating people's hands and following the Quran very strictly. But he's also for women's rights. He's also very open-minded about different solutions to Pakistan's economic problems. So I think it's hard to put him in one of those pigeonholes. Ahmad asked, do you see an improvement in Pak-U.S. relations? That's a good question, because on one hand, he's a stronger leader, and I think he'll get more respect around the world immediately. On the other hand, he's more of a challenge, and he's already said that he doesn't like the drone attacks that have been happening in Pakistan. Pakistan has been a battleground in the war on terror. There have been countless drone attacks here, and Khan has spoken out about what he thinks is unjust behavior by the American government. Killing an entire family, he says, when you're targeting a single terrorist. He thinks that's outrageous. So I think he's going to push back on a lot of things that Pakistan has accepted. The question is, this is a country that has been controlled by the military for so long, and even in this election, they helped push him to power. So how much ability is he going to be to rewrite? How much ability is he going to have to rewrite Pakistan's policies? It's a big question. He has a lot of popular support, but the Pakistani military establishment also has a lot of power. Does he have a plan for Afghanistan? This is what Bassett asks. Does he have a plan for Afghanistan? He says he does. He says his plan is to open up the borders, work more closely with the Taliban, and try to negotiate that the war on terror has been a disaster. The American involvement in Afghanistan has been a disaster. He spoke about that in an interview with us. It's quoted in today's story, which is on our homepage. And he said, what were his exact words? It was something like, the U.S. didn't learn from history. And it was clear to anybody in this part of the world, and anybody who knows about the history of Afghanistan, that you can't occupy that country and stay there without engendering this very intense resentment and resistance. And that's what we've seen. I was in Afghanistan years ago. I was in there right after the U.S. invaded, and there was this sense of hope. It was such a beautiful thing to see. Girls going to school for the first time in years, because under the Taliban they hadn't been able to, and shops opening, and people going back to their fields and speaking more openly, and radio stations going back on the air, because the Taliban had been so restrictive and repressive. And the U.S. had this opportunity for a couple of years in Afghanistan to really turn things around, inject a lot of money, inject a lot of support, a lot of technical expertise, because much of Afghanistan is years behind the rest of the world. Very cut off, very mountainous, very beautiful. One of the most beautiful countries I've ever set foot in. These amazingly clear blue skies and dramatic white mountain peaks, and people dressed in very traditional clothing. But what happened was, a couple years into that whole Afghanistan adventure by the U.S. government, they got distracted by Iraq. And they went into Afghanistan in 2002, and they went into Iraq in 2003, and Afghanistan got forgotten. So we saw Afghanistan, I saw it, take a turn for the worst, and that's where it remains today. Somebody asked Chelsea, what are Mr. Khan and his party's approach to China? So I think he's going to get closer to China. I think he is going to try to work with them on infrastructure, maybe on strategic issues. Maybe he'll open up some of the ports to Chinese warships. It's not clear, but he's definitely signaled from his earliest words that he's interested in a good, strong relationship with China, which is a major player in this region. And not to bore you guys with too many details, but China and Pakistan see themselves as sort of teaming up against India. Pakistan is threatened by India. China is threatened by India. And they see themselves as a natural alliance to check India, which is this big country in between them. There's the last two questions, which are, Greg asked, do you believe if this suggests, we already answered that, Western influence. Fareed asks, Do you think Pakistan is a rising superpower? So for Reed, right now, I would say no. I don't see Pakistan as a superpower. Pakistan has nuclear weapons. Pakistan has 200 million people. Pakistan is a very interesting country with a long, rich history. And it's a powerful country. But I don't see it as a superpower because of its poverty. So many people in this country are desperately poor. Every year, there's this exodus of young men that flee Pakistan looking for the lowliest jobs they can get because there's no jobs back home. I met some just recently in Abu Dhabi. They're cleaning the streets. They're working as janitors. They're working as taxi drivers. They're doing whatever they can, wherever they can, to make some money and send it home. As long as you have that level of poverty, I think it's going to be very, very hard to turn Pakistan into this world power. But I think Khan has got a really good shot at raising Pakistan's profile. And I feel lucky to be here to witness this. It's a fascinating time. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm exhausted. I was up to 3 a.m. last night, 4 a.m., waiting for these election results, and it's almost midnight now. So I'm going to call it a day. But again, thank you. That's how people sort of extend in Pakistan. They put their hand on the heart when they say thank you. And I'd like to say thank you, and I enjoyed this a lot. Bye-bye. Just going to sign off.